Hello, everyone. Here we are. We're going to get going with 1 Samuel chapter 19. And it's starting to get interesting because Saul is starting to fear David, and it's not going to be long before he realizes that David was always the one to fear because he was the one that God favored to replace Saul. Okay? So the last thing we heard was that David was winning wars, gaining popularity. Saul was hoping to send him out to a war where he would get killed by the Philistines, and it never happened. So let's pick it up from here, okay? Saul told his son Jonathan and all the attendants to kill David. There it is, okay? But Jonathan had taken a great liking to David and warned him, "My father Saul is looking for a chance to kill you. Be on your guard tomorrow morning, go into hiding and stay there. I'll go out and stand with my father in the field where you are. I'll speak to him about you and will tell you what I find out." Jonathan spoke well of David to Saul his father and said to him, "Let not the king do wrong to his servant David. He hasn't wronged you, and what he's done has benefited you greatly. He took his life in his hands when he killed the Philistine," meaning Goliath. "The Lord won a great victory for all Israel, and you saw it and were glad. Why then would you do wrong to an innocent man like David by killing him for no reason?" Saul listened to Jonathan and took this oath, "As surely as the Lord lives, David will not be put to death." So Jonathan called David and told him the whole conversation. He brought him to Saul, and David was with Saul as before. So that means he was playing the lyre for him when Saul was attacked by an evil spirit and his mood became foul. David was, he was, whatever happened, but he felt better. I'm assuming it was foul or sad because he felt better after David played the lyre for him. Okay? Once more, war broke out, and David went out and fought the Philistines. He struck them with such force that they fled before him. But an evil spirit from the Lord came on Saul as he was sitting in his house with his spear in his hand. While David was playing the lyre, Saul tried to pin him to the wall with his spear, but David eluded him as Saul drove the spear into the wall. That night, David made good his escape. Saul sent men to David's house to watch it and to kill him in the morning. This is jealousy, folks, and the fear. It's fear and jealousy mixed together. But Michal, David's wife, warned him. Now remember, he won Michal, who was Saul's second daughter. He won her because he was supposed to bring 100 foreskins from the Philistines to Saul. Meanwhile, Saul was hoping that the Philistines would kill him. But David turned around and brought 200 foreskins. So he won Michal in marriage. So let's start this again. Saul sent men to David's house to watch it and to kill him in the morning. But Michal, David's wife, warned him, "If you don't run for your life tonight, tomorrow you'll be killed." So Michal let David down through a window, and he fled and escaped. Then Michal took an idol and laid it on the bed, covering it with a garment and putting some goat's hair at the head. So this must have been a pretty big idol. When Saul sent the men to capture David, Michal said, "He's ill." Then Saul sent the men back to see David and told them, "Bring him up to me in his bed so that I may kill him." But when the men entered, there was the idol in the bed, and at the head was some goat's hair. Saul said to Michal, "Why did you deceive me like this and send my enemy away so that he escaped?" Michal told him, "He said to me, 'Let me get away. Why should I kill you?'" Meaning he's assuming that if they come in and kill him, Saul's men, they'll just kill her as a side note. Okay, so he's saying, "Let me go. Why should they kill you, Michal?" Then, when David had fled and made his escape, he went to Samuel at Ramah and told him all that Saul had done to him. Then he and Samuel went to Naioth and stayed there. It's probably Naioth. Word came to Saul, David is at Naioth at Ramah, so he sent men to capture him. But when they saw a group of prophets prophesying, with Samuel standing there as their leader, the Spirit of God came on Saul's men, and they also prophesied. Saul was told about it, and he sent more men, and they prophesied too. Saul sent men a third time, and they also prophesied. Finally, he himself left for Ramah and went to the great cistern at Seku, and he asked, "Where are Samuel and David?" "Over in Naioth at Ramah," they said. So Saul went to Naioth at Ramah, but the Spirit of God came even on him, and he walked along prophesying until he came to Naioth. He stripped off his garments, and he too prophesied in Samuel's presence. He lay naked all that day and all that night. This is why people say, "Is Saul also among the prophets?" All right. 1 Samuel 20. Then David fled from Naioth at Ramah and went to Jonathan, Saul's son, and asked, "What have I done? What's my crime? How have I wronged your father that he's trying to kill me?" "Never," Jonathan replied. "You're not going to die. Look, my father doesn't do anything great or small without letting me know. Why would he hide this from me? It isn't so." But David took an oath and said, "Your father knows very well that I have found favor in your eyes." And he said to himself, "Jonathan must not know this, or he'll be grieved. Yet as surely as the Lord lives and as you live, there's only a step between me and death." Jonathan said to David, "Whatever you want me to do, I'll do it for you." So David said, "Look, tomorrow's the new moon feast, and I'm supposed to dine with the king, but let me go and hide in the field until the evening of the day after tomorrow. If your father misses me at all, tell him David earnestly asked my permission to hurry to Bethlehem, his hometown, because an annual sacrifice is being made there for his whole clan. If he says very well, then your servant is safe, but if he loses his temper, you can be sure that he's determined to harm me. As for you, show kindness to your servant, for you have brought him into a covenant with you before the Lord. If I'm guilty, then kill me yourself. Why hand me over to your father?" "Never," Jonathan said. "If I had the least inkling that my father was determined to harm you, wouldn't I tell you?" David asked, "Who will tell me if your father answers you harshly?" He's trying to set up a situation where it will be proven to Jonathan that Saul is desiring to kill David. Okay, he's trying to show Jonathan what's going on, and Jonathan keeps saying, "I haven't heard about it," and he tells me everything. So he's saying, go to the dinner, and when he notices I'm gone, if he even does, then tell him I had to go home for a sacrifice for my entire clan. And if he is fine with it, then fine. But if he gets really angry, you're going to know he's got it in for me. Okay? "Come," Jonathan said. "Let's go out into the field." So they went there together. Then Jonathan said to David, "I swear by the Lord, the God of Israel, that I will surely sound out my father by this time, the day after tomorrow. If he is favorably disposed towards you, will I not send you word and let you know? But if my father intends to harm you, may the Lord deal with Jonathan, be it ever so severely, if I don't let you know and send you away in peace. May the Lord be with you as he's been with my father, but show me unfailing kindness like the Lord's kindness as long as I live, so that I may not be killed. And do not ever cut off your kindness from my family." This is Jonathan praying to the Lord. "Not even when the Lord cut off every one of David's enemies." Okay, let me read that again. "But show me unfailing kindness like the Lord's kindness as long as I live, so that I may not be killed. And don't ever cut off your kindness from my family, not even when the Lord has cut off every one of David's enemies from the face of the earth." So Jonathan made a covenant with the house of David, saying, "May the Lord call David's enemies to account." And Jonathan, so he's praying that David's enemies are done away with. And Jonathan had David reaffirm his oath out of love for him, because he loved him as he loved himself. Then Jonathan said to David, "Tomorrow's the new moon feast. You will be missed because your seat will be empty. The day after tomorrow, towards evening, go to the place where you hid when this trouble began and wait by the stone Ezel, E-Z-E-L. I will shoot 3 arrows to the side of it as though I were shooting at a target. Then I will send a boy and say, 'Go find the arrows.' If I say to him, 'Look, the arrows are on this side of you, bring them here,' then come, because as surely as the Lord lives, you're safe. There's no danger. But if I say to the boy, 'Look, the arrows are beyond you,' then you must go, because the Lord has sent you away. And about the matter you and I discussed, remember, the Lord is witness between you and me forever." There's true friendship here. So David hid in the field. Excuse me. And when the new moon feast came, the king sat down to eat. He sat in his customary place by the wall opposite Jonathan, and Abner sat next to Saul, but David's place was empty. Saul said nothing that day, for he thought something must have happened to David to make him ceremonially unclean. Surely he's unclean. But the next day, the second day of the month, David's place was empty again. Then Saul said to his son Jonathan, "Why hasn't the son of Jesse come to the meal either yesterday or today?" Jonathan answered, "David earnestly asked me for permission to go to Bethlehem. He said, 'Let me go because our family's observing a sacrifice in the town, and my brother has ordered me to be there. If I found favor in your eyes, let me get away to see my brothers. That's why he hasn't come to the king's table.'" Saul's anger flared up at Jonathan, and he said to him, "You son of a perverse and rebellious woman! Don't I know that you've sided with the son of Jesse to your own shame and to the shame of the mother that bore you? As long as the son of Jesse lives on this earth, neither you nor your kingdom will be established. Now send someone to bring him to me, for he must die." Okay, there's the proof. So he's saying, this kingdom, and I guess he's thinking that Jonathan will follow him in kingship after he's dead. And he's saying neither you nor your kingdom will be established. So he's freaked out. He knows David's coming, okay? It almost reminds me of that thing I put up about Trump, where Trump was dancing to that song by Sam and David or something, some duo. Hold on, I'm coming. If you're having a bad day, hold on, I'm coming, okay? So Saul knows David's coming and he wants to kill him. He's saying, if you let this son of Jesse live, you're not going to have a kingdom. It's never going to be established, okay? Now send someone to bring him to me, for he must die. Why should he be put to death? What's he done? Jonathan asked his father. How embarrassing. This is happening at the feast, right? But Saul hurled his spear at him to kill him. Then Jonathan knew that his father intended to kill David. I mean, that would be pretty clear. If your own father's throwing a spear at you, you get it. Your father's on the warpath. Jonathan got up from the table in fierce anger on that second day of the feast. He didn't eat because he was grieved at his father's shameful treatment of David. It would be highly embarrassing, wouldn't it? In the morning, Jonathan went out to the field for his meeting with David. He had a small boy with him, and he said to the boy, "Run and find the arrows I shoot." As the boy ran, he shot an arrow beyond him. When the boy came to the place where Jonathan's arrow had fallen, Jonathan called out after him, "Isn't the arrow beyond you?" Then he shouted, "Hurry, go quickly, don't stop." The boy picked up the arrow and returned it to his master. The boy knew nothing about all this. Only Jonathan and David knew. Then Jonathan gave his weapons to the boy and said, "Go, carry them back to the town." After the boy had gone, David got up from the south side of the stone and bowed down before Jonathan 3 times with his face to the ground. Then they kissed each other and wept together, but David wept the most. Jonathan said to David, "Go in peace, for we've sworn friendship with each other in the name of the Lord, saying, 'The Lord is witness between you and me, and between your descendants and my descendants forever.'" Then David left, and Jonathan went back to the town. How sad. And it's going to be a long time before David can return. 1 Samuel 21. David went to Nob, N-O-B. To Ahimelech the priest. Ahimelech trembled when he met him and asked, "Why are you alone? Why is no one with you?" David answered Ahimelech the priest, "The king sent me on a mission and said to me, 'No one's to know anything about the mission I'm sending you on.'" So he's not telling the truth here. "As for my men, I've told them to meet me at a certain place. Now then, what do you have on hand? Give me 5 loaves of bread or whatever you can find." But the priest answered David, "I don't have any ordinary bread on hand. However, there is some consecrated bread here, provided the men have kept themselves from women." David replied, "Indeed, women have been kept from us as usual whenever I set out. The men's bodies are holy, even on missions that are not holy. How much more so today?" That's interesting. The men's bodies are holy, even on missions that are not holy, meaning going out to slaughter other people in war. How much more so today? So the priest gave him the consecrated bread, since there was no bread there except the bread of the presence, capital P, that had been removed from before the Lord and replaced by hot bread on the day it was taken away. Now, one of Saul's servants was there that day, detained before the Lord. He was Doeg, the Edomite. So he's one of the tribe. He's a descendant of Esau, who was an enemy to Jacob, even though they made up later. If you remember Jacob, who the Lord named Israel, they were the twins, okay? And we remember all that drama between them. And of course, they did come back together, but the Edomites, the Lord said, the Edomites are not your friends. They're never going to be your friends, and they're not going to inherit the promise, okay? So this is a man named Doeg, the Edomite, and he is one of Saul's servants, and he happens to be hanging around with the priest. Saul's chief, okay, so let's read that again. Now, one of Saul's servants was there that day, detained before the Lord. He was Doeg, the Edomite, Saul's chief shepherd. David asked Ahimelech, "Don't you have a spear or a sword here?" "I haven't brought my sword or any other weapon because the king's mission was urgent." So he's trying to get supplies and he's trying to get weapons without being obvious, because he doesn't want Saul hearing where he's been. You know, like someone sending back to Saul and saying, "Hey, we saw David with Ahimelech the priest and he was getting swords and bread." You know, he doesn't want, he's disappearing. Okay, he's trying to disappear. The priest replied, "The sword of Goliath the Philistine, whom you killed in the valley of Eli, is here. It's wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. If you want it, take it. There's no sword here but that one." David said, "There's none like it. Give it to me." That day, David fled from Saul and went to Achish, king of Gath. So he went to the Philistines. But the servants of Achish said to him, "Isn't this David, the king of the land? Isn't he the one they sing about in their dances? Saul has slain his thousands and David his tens of thousands." That's what started all the jealousy, huh? David took these words to heart and was very much afraid of Achish, king of Gath. So he pretended to be insane in their presence. And while he was in their hands, he acted like a madman, making marks on the doors of the gate and letting saliva run down his beard. Man, he's trying to save his life, isn't he? Achish said to his servants, "Look at the man. He's insane. Why bring him to me? Am I so short of madmen that you have to bring this fellow here?" I'm sorry, that's funny. Am I so short of madmen that you have to bring this fellow here to carry on like this in front of me? Must this man come into my house? Something about that reminded me of my father. My father was English, and he had a very dry sense of humor and a very certain way of talking, of speaking. Not his accent, but just the way he spoke, okay? And it just reminded me of something he would say. "Look at the man. He's insane. Why bring him to me? Am I so short of madmen that you have to bring this fellow here to carry on like this in front of me? Must this man come into my house?" All right, last chapter for the night, 1 Samuel 22. David left Gath and escaped to the cave of Adullam. So they obviously got David out of the presence of Achish, because Achish felt like he had enough madmen in the court. He didn't need another one. So they got rid of him and somehow he escaped. So it says David left Gath and escaped to the cave of Adullam. When his brothers and his father's household heard about it, they went down to him there. All those who were in distress or in debt or discontented gathered around him, and he became their commander. About 400 men were with him. From there, David went to Mizpah in Moab and said to the king of Moab, "Would you let my father and mother come and stay with you until I learn what God will do for me?" So he left them with the king of Moab, and they stayed with him as long as David was in the stronghold. But the prophet Gad said to David, "Don't stay in the stronghold, go into the land of Judah." So David left and went to the forest of Hereth. Now Saul heard that David and his men had been discovered, and Saul was seated, spear in hand, under the tamarisk tree on the hill at Gibeah with all his officials standing at his side. He said to them, "Listen, men of Benjamin, will the son of Jesse give all of you fields and vineyards? Will the son of Jesse give all of you fields and vineyards? Will he make all of you commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds? Is that why you've all conspired against me? No one tells me when my son makes a covenant with the son of Jesse. None of you is concerned about me or tells me that my son has incited my servant to lie in wait for me as he does today." But Doeg, the Edomite, who was standing with Saul's officials, said, "I saw the son of Jesse come to Ahimelech, son of Ahitub at Nob. Ahimelech inquired of the Lord for him. He also gave him provisions and the sword of Goliath, the Philistine." Then the king sent for the priest Ahimelech, son of Ahitub, and all the men of his family who were the priests at Nob, and they all came to the king. Saul said, "Listen now, son of Ahitub." "Yes, my lord," he answered. Saul said to him, "Why have you conspired against me, you and the son of Jesse, giving him bread and a sword and inquiring of God for him, so that he's rebelled against me and lies in wait for me as he does today?" Boy, he's really kooky here, okay? He's really exaggerating. And, Ahimelech doesn't know jack. David didn't tell him. He had no idea what was going on. Ahimelech answered the king, "Who of all your servants is as loyal as David?" So see, he doesn't get it. He's saying, wait a minute. The king's son-in-law, captain of your bodyguard and highly respected in your household, was that day the first time I inquired of God for him? In other words, I've done it often enough. Of course not. Let not the king accuse your servant of or any of his father's family, for your servant knows nothing at all about this whole affair. But the king said, "You will surely die, Ahimelech, you and your whole family." Then the king ordered the guards at his side, "Turn and kill the priests of the Lord, because they too have sided with David." They knew he was fleeing, yet they didn't tell me. And they didn't know he was fleeing. But the king's officials were unwilling to raise a hand to strike the priests of the Lord. Hallelujah. The king then ordered Doeg, "You turn and strike down the priests." So Doeg, the Edomite, turned and struck them down. That day he killed 85 men who wore the linen ephod. He also put to the sword Nob, the town of the priests, with its men and women, its children and infants, and its cattle, donkeys, and sheep. But one son of Ahimelech, son of Ahitub, named Abiathar, escaped and fled to join David. That would make me join David too. He told David that Saul had killed the priests of the Lord. Then David said to Abiathar, "That day when Doeg the Edomite was there, I knew he would be sure to tell Saul. I'm responsible for the death of your whole family. Stay with me. Don't be afraid. The man who wants to kill you is trying to kill me too. You will be safe with me." Wow. Okay. We'll pick it up tomorrow. I believe there's 31 chapters in this book. So tomorrow we'll pick it up with 1 Samuel 23. I love you very much. Don't forget to pray, okay? Definitely pray. Times are still really rough. I got to tell you, I was talking to a friend of mine today, and she had an opinion about this whole leaked abortion memo from the Supreme Court, etc., blah, blah, blah. And I'm not going to bore you with the details except to tell you that one of her friends cut in and said to me after spewing vulgarities at me, this is a woman, a young woman, maybe 28. She spewed vulgarities at me and said, why don't you just go and pray somewhere? And I thought to myself, I just blocked her, but I thought to myself, boy, is she going to get in trouble for talking to one of the Lord's servants like that. Nobody was bothering her, but the Spirit of the Lord is such an offense in this day and age, especially with our young people. Not only do they know about the corruption we've seen in the White House for the last 35, 40 years, because they weren't there. They were kids, little kids, and didn't know what was going on. But they have bought every single lie that's been floated to them. One of them being that white men are the biggest problem in America, that they are the source of all suffering. It's really sad. And they've just been raised this way. They're just totally brainwashed. I mean, raised on TV and propaganda. So pray, okay? And just be prepared. I don't want you to be scared. You should never be afraid to share the gospel or speak your mind. Don't be, okay? Because you're the one putting the truth there. And it's not going to die. All their words will die, but you're firmly planting in the ground of the conversation truth, and that won't die, no matter how much they try to stomp on it. Okay, so don't be afraid, but be aware, okay, that there are some super haters out there. Like those big water pistols, the super soakers. These people are super soakers. It's amazing. I love you. I'll see you tomorrow. We'll pick it up with 1 Samuel 23, and we'll get on with the challenges that David is facing as he walks towards the kingship of Israel. Good night.